Welcome to the Edgevana Podcast, where we illuminate subjects in the IT infrastructure space. Get ready to hear some amazing insights from outstanding individuals that will change the way you think about IT. And now, here's your host, Mark Thiele.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Edgevana Podcast. Today, I have with me Lauren Cooney. Lauren has a fantastic background in the IT space and is now running her own business. And I'm really excited to hear a little bit more about what she's been doing and how she's been getting through some of the troubles that I've probably been facing in doing my business. So I'm excited to get that background and to share it with everyone. Lauren, again, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark. This is great to be here, and I'm super excited.
Awesome. So, Lauren, tell the audience a little bit about what you're doing these days, and maybe how you got here.
Sure. So, I actually run and own and that's interesting to say because I never thought I wanted to be a CEO, but I am the CEO of Spark Labs, which is a career consulting and strategy firm. And we do things like executive coaching and speaking for, companies at leadership summits and things along those lines. And our goal is really focused on bettering the environment for women in technology. And that's across the board. And I work with clients of, from lots of different companies, Johnson & Johnson, Microsoft, Google, Fidelity, the list just goes on. And I have, great folks, and they're all looking to accelerate their career in some way, or get a raise or a promotion, or figure something out that, how to get on a board, for example, is something that people ask me a lot about, and, or, trying to figure out what's next for them in their career. And, I think it's interesting because I didn't get here by, taking a coaching path, I guess would be, what that is. I got here because I, spent 20 years actually working at technology companies, first at BEA Systems with WebLogic, which is now Oracle, and then at IBM and open source, and then with Web 2.0 at IBM, and then rolling into more open source at Microsoft and leading the web platform team at Microsoft. And that's now Azure, actually. So that's interesting. And, then I jumped over to Juniper, and we built a software division at Juniper. And then I went over to Cisco and helped them build their SDN strategy, and then ended up building and running their whole open source organization division there. So awesome. It's been a great ride, and it was a lot of fun. And I left Cisco, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do next. And, I started doing some consulting for companies, and that wasn't doing it for me. And I took about a 2-month break where, I was seriously considering if I was going to stay in tech.
Yeah. No, I can sympathize. It's both funny and ironic. I'll give 2 examples of my own taking a break. My wife considers my last 9 months taking a break because I'm not making any money. So that's my problem right now. But another time when I left Gilead, I was literally on the way home thinking, okay, I'm going to take some time off, really rethink what I want to do next. Because Gilead, for all of its wins from the things that my team and I did together, was just incredibly trying. I mean, we went from 200 million in sales to 2 billion in sales over a 4-year period. And we grew from nothing. We grew from a situation where people would literally walk in at 3 p.m. and say, oh, I need to upgrade the Citrix servers with this. And they would do it in the middle of production, that kind of problem. And no data center standards. And I was on a short weekend vacation with my wife and her sister and her sister's husband up in Point Reyes. And we got a call saying, hey, the data center is mostly powered down. And we found out that it was powered down because a cleaning person had plugged in the buffer to the wall socket on the other side of the wall from the data center, and apparently that was still connected. So just that kind of stuff tired me out, and I wanted to, and my time off lasted a whole weekend.
And even if it was that, I think, I remember we had a large customer that had a network go down on the Eastern Seaboard because a piece of code was inserted in beta
Yeah.
versus in, GA, and it took the whole coast down for a little bit. And those are the times where you get the phone calls and you're like, all right, got to figure out something to do. What's plan B?
Yeah, I could take my second passport and go to Mexico, or I could just not sleep. So
exactly.
So this
exactly.
There are debates and arguments about when the best time to start a business is, and superficially looking at a situation like a global pandemic, you would argue that maybe that's not a good time to start a business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'd love to get your take on a couple of opportunity / problem areas that I've faced, and certainly we'll go into more. But like the first one of the common comments I give people is, well, on the one hand, it's saved my personal pocketbook as a bootstrapping entrepreneur from having everyone that expects to talk to me expect me to fly to them.
Yep.
Right. If I was an investor, if I'm talking to a big data center company, traditionally they'd be like, I'm not going to talk to you unless you're going to come to my data center and walk through it and understand what we do here and stuff like that. Why would I give you representation to this multi-billion-dollar business if you don't even know it personally, right? The downside, and this is where I'd love to get your feedback on both of the angles to this comment, but the downside to me is that I've always hesitated to take any trip ever. But I've always done it because it's been part of my job always to do some level of traveling. The day before is always painful, but then I get there and I realize, okay, it doesn't matter what I thought about the waste of time or whatever. I'm glad I'm here because this is valuable. Almost every single time, right?
Yep.
And so my concern is, yes, I might be saving money, but is that kind of like saying, yeah, we're struggling right now, so let's kill marketing?
I don't think so. And I'll tell you why, because, when I was literally an accidental CEO, right? Like I realized that I, didn't want to leave tech because I didn't want to leave any women behind.
Yeah.
And so I came back to help elevate women. And in that, was figuring out my own business and how am I going to structure this? And how do I work with, clients, and how do I get clients? And what does this look like? Who is my client? Right. And I will tell you, I jumped on so many planes and went to so many conferences, and I don't think that I got much out of it. I got much more out of online engagement, LinkedIn, connections, word of mouth, Twitter, more so than I ever got jumping on a plane, with the exception of when I do big presentations to companies for their offsite meetings.
Right.
That's something where I really feel like I would love to be connecting with the audience more. But I think with regards to clients, I can tell now with, the expression on their face and the tone of their voice, what's really, there's something going on or what's happening. And I think this also is just a massive time saver.
Yeah.
Right. Living in Northern California, right, in Marin County, I've got to drive all the way down south, typically to San Jose, to do a bunch of meetings. And that's a whole day for one meeting.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. So how do I, the pandemic came and it was just this it's, kind of Zoom overwhelm. But I also think that it is saving us money in a really smart way. So thankfully that's happening.
Well, that's good. I mean, and it's good that you don't feel like it's that on the one hand it might have provided some obvious financial benefit, but on the other hand there might have been missed opportunities. And it's great to see that you don't feel like the missed opportunity piece is bigger than the other opportunity, which is what I was worried about, right? So, I feel like if I had to do over again, there's at least a handful of things that I would have done differently in how I started the company. From how we managed our paperwork to how we engaged with legal to how much effort we spent on something when it was still a sliding objective, right? Things like that. Tell us a little bit about, what you've found so far in running your own company and whether or not any of that's related to the pandemic at the same time.
I think, when I first incorporated, I picked a name, Spark Labs, that was, sparking an idea really, and then going to work on it because I wanted that execution angle. And Spark Labs is a name that's out there, and I know that, and it probably wasn't the smartest name to pick, but I did pick it. And I think I think 2 months in, I got a cease and desist for my website, right?
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh boy, what is this? And thankfully, I had hired a larger tech firm that I just literally could hand that letter to them, and they put in a phone call. I think scared the smaller company. It was a I was obviously the smallest company, right? It was me and a
Right.
contractor, but they backed off, and I got a trademark on it for what
Nice.
I was doing.
Nice.
So, that was pre-pandemic. And I think one of the things that I look at now is, you mentioned, like, for example, like, are we foregoing marketing, things like that.
Yep.
I look at, I have to be doing several activities a day that are lead generation activities, right? So I will block off an hour to an hour and a half every morning and email people or respond to people's tweets or
Yep.
go on LinkedIn and make sure that I'm hitting my contacts for, do they need anything? Can I help them with anything? Right. That sort of thing. I think that's what I see during the pandemic, is that extra reach out. And I'm actually genuinely checking in with people. Like, I'm not just checking in to say, like, hey, like, just seeing if there are any opportunities for me to work with you. It's me checking in with people that I know and saying, like, hey, how are you doing during this? Is
Right.
this because I think people are going through a lot of stress right now,
Yeah.
and they're working in environments that are incredibly tough, with kids and, everyone home and, bandwidth,
Yep.
stuff like that. And so there are, I think that's a struggle that, I see happening, that is, come across.
Right.
But I think the legal thing is, just in a nutshell, right off the bat, it was important for me to get a big firm once, to just get established. And after that, I simplified, which was really smart, because it was like the big firms are too expensive, and you once you get your niche, you can narrow down to
Right.
a smaller firm. I also realized that there are a bunch of things that I don't like doing. Right. And a lot of that was I didn't want to track my receipts. I
Yep.
literally left the corporate world, and I was like, I am never tracking another receipt. So I outsourced my finances to a firm that handles that. And it was the best decision ever.
Nice.
Every month, I am very happy paying that bill.
Yeah. 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 No,
Hmm.
I think that's really critical. I mean, knowing, it's something that I believe we continue to have to do, which is continue to know each other or know
Hmm.
ourselves, right?
Yep.
And yeah, the again, as my wife would tell you, my strong suit is not high level optimization of paperwork and note taking and stuff like that. That is not my strength, right?
Hmm.
Um, my strength is on execution. It's on team building. It's
Yep.
on taking an idea to something, right?
Hmm.
But to say that the data centers I built or the infrastructure that I designed or whatever was Mark is nothing but bullshit. It's the team.
Yeah.
My value to the organization was maybe a little bit of smarts, but more than anything else is making sure the team had everything they needed so they could be successful, right?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you're talking about, is giving yourself what you need to be successful, whether that's a person or hiring an outsourced supply
Hmm.
of some sort.
And I
So
think
go ahead.
I
Go
think
ahead.
just really quickly, I think people make their first hires initially, and they make them because they think they need something that they want
Right.
versus they actually need. I brought in someone to do, I think, social, and I didn't need someone to do social, and so that lasted for a very short period of time. Right,
Yeah.
I really needed to focus on what did I not want to do, not who did I want to bring in.
Right.
So it's a leveling of, it's a conversation you have to have with, someone that will tell you the truth,
Yeah.
right? So, and
Well, I
that's
mean, and
important.
that's, I mean, like you, I mean, we're both involved in the community. We're both active on
Hmm.
social. Um, and there are a lot of people that I would love to work with, just
Hmm.
to be able to say I'm working with them. right? Because I like them and I
Yep.
think they're great people. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they're the people that I should hire to solve for the
Yep.
problems that I'm facing as my company. And so that's,
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you in the sense that that's something I have to consider every time, right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
it'd be really easy to push the easy button to hire for this role or that role. But I'm not necessarily hiring for skill set. I'm hiring for comfort, which isn't
Yes.
necessarily the right thing. You know, so
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to, and this is just a little thing that, you know, kind of like, uh, um, you know, 7 habits or whatever type of thing. But you mentioned something about pre-scheduling time in your calendar. And I'm about 50% successful with that because I have a very bad habit of having a low trigger point for allowing another meeting that I think is important to take over the hour I'd set aside to reach out to customers or to reach out to potential partners or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
What have you done to help uh, provide more consistency there?
So this is actually really interesting. My younger sister, who is 7 years younger than me, we were just chatting on the phone on the weekends, and she was asking kind of like what I did during my day. And she was like, well, don't you batch schedule your meetings? And I was like, hmm, right. And I was already blocking off time, but I wasn't batch scheduling the consistency of the tasks that I was doing.
Yeah.
And so once I started to do that, I was spending less time switching roles, right? From
Right.
coach to business owner to marketer to salesperson,
Yeah.
right? And I was doing things that were actually more effective that I could scale
Yeah.
because I was doing them together and then I was done.
Right.
And so, you know, basically what I do is Monday through Wednesday, I do coaching calls. And
Yep.
then Thursday and Friday, I run the business.
That's good. That's good. Because I imagine you probably, before you started doing batching, you probably saw a lot of the same things that I still
Yes.
struggle with occasionally, which is that it's like, okay, well, I've got 10 minutes between my next meeting, but there's nothing I can really do in 10 minutes. So I'm sort of just wasting my time and checking
Hmm.
email 4 or 5 times before the 10 minutes runs out and my next meeting starts or something like that. And so that I believe adds up to a good hour a day of wasted time on average
Yeah.
when I'm not consistent. Yeah.
And I also, you know, I actually hired a coach for myself that,
Nice.
you know, where we, you know, she works with me on, you know, back end systems and scaling out my business and a lot of work on, just really kind of, getting shit done,
Yep.
you know, for lack of a better term, in the scope of, you know, owning a business versus owning a component of a business, right?
Right. Right.
So that's been helpful to have someone kind of watching over me a little bit too, and advising on that.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So, you know, the role of CEO can, at least I've found so far, because I never thought I cared to be a CEO either.
Yeah.
I'm not someone who looks for everything. I'm definitely someone who enjoys the spotlight occasionally. I like being on stage. I love talking to people. I'm not going to deny that there is that part of the vanity in Mark Thiele, but I've never thought that I needed to own everything and be everything to everyone, right? That was never my
Hmm.
goal in life. Um, and you know, over the years, I've read, you know, probably 24 different books on managing your time or planning your career or being a better leader or whatever the case may be. And you know, specifically as it relates to career path, I always felt like, well, first I always wondered, okay, I hope I'm just not stupid, which is highly likely. Um, but my impression was that prescriptive career planning is not an answer, is that your
Yeah.
career planning has to be for you. And for one
Hmm.
person, it might very well be, I'm going to work at 18 months at this job, and I'm going to take exactly these classes to get into the next job, whatever the case may be. But that is not how my career played out. And I don't believe that if I tried to do it that way, that in fact, I would argue that I probably wouldn't have done as well in my career if I had
Yeah.
tried to do that. What's your take on that?
You know, I can best answer this with literally the best advice I've ever received from my mentor, that when I was probably 23 or 24, right? And he was not, it was, I was paired with him. He was the vice president of services, and I was running like, you know, something in developer relations, right? And so we met up and he said, where do you want to be in 10 or 20 years? I said, I don't know. He said, all right, call me when you know. And he left the room, right? So I had to figure out an answer pretty quick, right?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
sent him a note the next day and I was like, I thought about this and I thought really hard. I was like, the best answer I can give you is I want to be an executive at a technology company. He goes, all right, that's a start. So at least if you start somewhere literally and you can map that out that far, then you're not taking like, I think what you were discussing is like, a tactic versus the long-term strategy. And you really
Right.
want to be looking at what is the long-term strategy and how are you building for that? So like, how are you building your network? Because your network is going to get you that next job.
Yeah.
Right. And for skills, how are you building on your technical skills? And at what point do you stop investing in your technical skills and start investing in soft skills? Because soft skills will get you to the executive ranks.
Right.
Technical skills will not.
Right. Well, and it's funny that you brought up the network piece, and I know that that particular topic has been covered a lot throughout the work career life and all that stuff. But I think if there are things that beg repeating, networking is probably one of them. And I'm just going to give a personal example, and that's when I left HP. I joined a startup, and it was 2000, and it was worst case potential startup. Well, it could be a web startup or it could have been a networking equipment startup. I picked networking equipment startup. So either one were disaster, like Crystal rolling down a rocky mountain. And so we lasted about 10 months. And so I had been at HP my entire life. I knew no one outside of the HP family. HP was laying off half the people that I'd worked with, and the other half couldn't hire anybody. So I was literally like a baby thrown out with the cold water into the snow, naked. I knew nothing. I knew no one. And I swore that was one thing I did, was that when I finally found a decent job, I made it my life's work to begin building my network and making those external connections and being involved more in the industry, and not letting any one company's environment dictate my sphere of influence or knowledge gathering. Right. So yeah, 100%.
That's so important. I can't stress, enough. I take clients on that have started building a network and they want another job and they don't know how to make that leap. And so they're dealing with, LinkedIn software system, for recruiting and sending in resumes cold. And that's not how it works. Yes, we both know. Right. Yeah. So that's an important one.
Well, Lauren, this has gone past way faster than I had hoped. And I know that we could do this again and spend a significant amount of quality time on the topics we're covering. As we wrap up, what kind of closing thoughts? I mean, why would somebody call Spark Labs as an example? I'm happy with that closing thought if you want to.
Yeah, well, when you call up Spark Labs, you're calling me for, you want to figure out what's next, or you want to figure out how to do better in an existing role, or get that promotion, or get paid more, or figure out what your long-term career plan is. Yep. Right. I work with folks that are, early to mid-stage career all the way through the executive suite. So I do work with quite a variety of clients. Nice. And I also do a lot of speaking engagements with companies for their offsite meetings. So, and women's groups as well. So SIGs and things like that. So, any topic on career acceleration, what makes you successful at work, really how to be a great leader and build, a team in the time of COVID.
Right.
These are all things that we're talking about right now.
Awesome. Well, Lauren, again, thank you very much for being on the program. It's been fantastic, and good to see you. Ideally, at some point, we'll all get a chance to see each other in person again. But best of luck with what you're doing, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you. And you too, Mark. You too.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Edgevana Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast listening app or on YouTube. To learn more, visit www.edgevana.com. Thanks for listening, and be sure to join us on our next episode.